8 to 10 of those are innocent children. What has brought this latest murder and atrocity onto the Gazan people?
Yes, thank you very much for this question. Actually, we spent 3 days, the toughest days in our lives in Gaza, especially that Israel initiated the violence as always they have it. And it killed, as you said, 44 Palestinians, including 15 children and 4 women, and injured 360 people. It was very much tough and full of hegemony, and this is not something new to Israel. It was very much hard for us, especially that we have been trying to recover from the Israeli aggression in May last year, 2021. And this escalation, it brought very difficult and hard memories to us that we haven't overcome yet. People were enjoying the day, the Friday, as a weekend, and people were spending their time as usual. We didn't have any kind of warning and no indicators of an escalation whatsoever. And then suddenly, and all at once, Israel started the escalation by assassinating a high-profile commander in the Islamic Jihad, and then it went on with its hegemony to expand the target bank. It targeted innocent people, including civilians, children, women, elderly men. Just yesterday, there was a rumors about a ceasefire at 8 o'clock. But before the ceasefire at 8 o'clock, Israel committed two horrendous massacres. One in a Bureij refugee camp, when it killed 4 people, including a father and his 3 children from a Nabahin family, and another one in Al-Fallujah cemetery in northern Gaza, and it killed 5 children. It was so much difficult, and the visuals are so painful that I can't even describe in words.
Aya, you mentioned that people were just going about their normal day-to-day business in Palestine, in Gaza, without any forewarning of this horrible massacre that was perpetrated on innocent people. Is it normal for, is this the modus operandi of these murderous occupiers that without warning they start massacring innocent men, women, and children? According to international human rights codes of conduct, were they not supposed to give out some sort of a warning so people, innocent people, could have, to try to shelter their lives and their children?
Yes, apparently Israel made a premeditated plan before it went on with the escalation. And the mere existence of Israel is initiating violence. I'm not only talking about these 3 days. The very fact that Israel represents a multi-tiered system of oppression, namely of occupation, apartheid, and settler colonialism, means that Palestinians are subjected to violence on daily basis. And we have been subjected to this for 74 years now. So basically, this is not something new to the history of Palestinians under occupation, under settler colonialism and apartheid. But, it's also a violation of the Geneva Convention and international law to fight the people you occupy, and even without any kind of warning. So what is the sin of Palestinians who were safe in their homes and then suddenly targeted and stripped of their right to life, found themselves suddenly dead? I mean, the stories are terrific. One of the stories is about a newly married man who got married only a few weeks ago, and he was hit in Rafah in southern Gaza. He was found dead with his mother. And another one is about an only child, for example, whose parents tried to have children for 16 years, and then they had that boy, named him Khalil. They took cared very well of him, and they loved him. They raised him with absolute affection, and they waved dreams about his future. And then Israel comes to kill him and deprive the parents of their only son. I mean, I listened to his mother talking about this, describing his feelings, and she said that, to whom am I living right now? I used to live for him. I used to do everything for him. Now, who is going to come and to knock on the door and tell me, how are you, mom? Who's going to call me mom? It was absolutely heartbreaking. Hello?
We
Can you
are,
hear me?
yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me? Can you hear me,
Yes.
Aya? All right. We are heartbroken by that
Yes.
story. We have come across all of these stories that you alluding to as well. I'm going to now cross over to Mohammed Mhawesh, who is a journalist based in Gaza City. I'll come back to you, Aya, and I also want one of you to share with me the timeline from August 2005 up until August 2002 today to to roll out how the innocent people have been targeted by these murderous Israeli occupiers. Mohammed Mhawesh, Salaam alaikum, welcome to the program.
Walaikum Assalam. Thank you so much for having me.
Uh, I'm just devastated, as are the people of South Africa. Our hearts go out to you. We are very, very sorry that we're having to talk to you this morning, knowing that you have lost 41 of your brothers and sisters in Palestine in possibly unprovoked attacks. However, the occupiers are saying in news bulletins that they have put out internationally that they were responding to Islamic Jihad terrorists. And in these attacks, where 40 odd people have been killed, that two jihadists were killed as well. What do you know about their claim?
Yes, first of all, I think we should stress the fact that from time to time, Israel unleashes this wave of unjustified, provocative, irresponsible, and brutal attacks against civilians and innocent people in Gaza under different motives and reasons, trying to justify the crimes in front of the international community. That is also hypocrite and complicit in the crimes committed against the 2 million population and residents of the Gaza Strip and Palestinians in here. So if they are saying they were committing like a targeted airstrikes against sites that were associated with Islamic Jihad, that's totally untrue because out of the 42 people who were massacred, only two people were belonging to the Islamic Jihad, and the rest, 40 people, most of whom were children and women, were innocent and were average citizens and civilians. What is the wrong and what is the fault of children who were under the age of 15 to be killed under the political motive of targeting, and I'm quoting the Islamic Jihad, for example. So it is a war on children. It is a war on women, and it's a war on innocent civilian children in Gaza under different political motives and reasons before the international community. This is number one. Number two, that this is not the first time that Israel kills civilians in Gaza, and the international media tries to frame the story as it is a war between two equal sides, as if it is a war between two armies, as if it is a war between two, for example, complete countries. But it is not. It is an aggression of a nuclear power highly militarized and equipped military against 2 million people who have the right to defend themselves, who have the right where they are in an air prison. It is the Gaza Strip. There is 360 square kilometers where they have the right to defend their land, to defend culture, to defend their existence by any means possible. But the media doesn't seem to notice the Israeli attacks on a daily basis unless Palestinians are back. And then the question matters is why Palestinians are threatening Israeli people. This is not, an equal context because we have to understand that one side is an occupying power, an indisputable occupying power, and the other side is an occupied people. And Israel always gets away with its crimes because it tries to whitewash the bloodshed of the Palestinian people under the false under the false pretext of that targeting terror sites and people. So it is not justified that the people of Gaza are enduring for the fifth time. I mean, can you imagine that a child who is 17 or 18 years old is enduring and living through the fifth war of his lifetime? It is unimaginable, and it leaves us, although now we are stepping into an effect of a ceasefire, it is the worst that what comes after the ceasefire is to have a ceasefire that heals the physical wounds and the psychological devastation that 2 million people in Gaza here are left with. It is a ceasefire that is good to stop the bloodshed, but it is not even enough because Israel will get back to killing us and it will get back to occupying Gaza and will get back to restricting and besieging all the way into Gaza and preventing the goods and the life necessities and medical equipment to get in and leaving us to die very quietly and very slowly once again.
Okay, Mohammed, and please can I ask you to stand by? We need to take an ad break and we'll be back to carry on this very, very important discussion. So please do stand by. Don't hang up. I have lots more questions for both of you.
Listen to something fresh. Listen to Salam Media.
As some look forward to the blessings and beauty of winter, the less fortunate in South Africa are preparing for the harsh realities that this season may bring. Africa Muslims agencies on the ground distributing blankets, clothing and other essentials to thousands across the country. Sponsor a winter warmth pack for 280 Rand. Call Africa Muslims Agency now on 011 834 8685. Spread warmth this winter with Africa Muslims Agency.
It's the most exclusive event of the year, the Randery Jewelers Gold Souk Weekend. Fantastic deals on gold earrings, diamond rings, wedding jewelry, and so much more. Treat yourself to a relaxing foot massage, gorgeous henna application, or indulge in our delicious high tea. Join us on the 30th and 31st of July at the Houghton Golf Club in Houghton, Johannesburg. Follow Randery Jewelers on Instagram for more details. Randery Jewelers, the family name you can trust.
Did you know that through Sanzaf, you can provide a meal to an individual for only 12 Rand? By committing to a monthly contribution, you can assist us in reaching out to more communities and deserving individuals. A once-off donation will also be highly appreciated in helping us achieve our monthly target. For more information, call us on 011 834 6046. Sanzaf, changing lives through development and relief.
Breaking stereotypes, moving boundaries, joining hands. Salam Media. Humanity sets the agenda.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back. It is 8:24 a.m. Central African Time. We are talking with Aya Al-Ghazzawi. She's a Palestinian human rights activist based in Gaza. And we're also talking with Palestinian journalist Mohammed R Mhawesh. Let's come back to you, Aya. And we've heard reports about the hospitals may not be able to cope with the influx of the wounded, and also the fact that they are running low on fuel reserves for possibly generators, and they won't be able to operate, regarding the patients that come in. What is the situation as we speak? Has that been stabilized in any way at all? Aya, are you there? Have
Yes,
you heard
thank you
the
very much for
question?
your question. Yes,
Please
I've
go
heard
ahead.
the question. So before the escalation, they were supposed to have trucks of fuel entering the Gaza Strip, but it didn't happen because of the escalation. And we had a shortage of fuel before Israel initiated the violence and this military aggression on the Gaza Strip. But after within the escalation, it became even more dangerous and more serious because, as you said, the hospital received an influx of injuries. We're talking about more than 300 injuries entering hospitals due to the airstrikes of the Israeli warplanes. I remember the spokesperson of the health of ministry said that we only had 48 hours before the medical facilities shut down entirely because we don't have enough fuel or energy to deal with the casualties and injuries. This actually reflects not only a serious case and during these 3 days, but before and after. It is a state that we've been suffering from over the course of the Israeli blockade on Gaza, as we have been under a brutal siege since 2007. Now, how the medical facilities will have to cope and deal with the injuries, I personally don't know, because it isn't only fuel that we lack. It's also medical expertise and medical, medicine, appliances, a lot of things actually. And this escalation came at a time where we have an already depleted healthcare system. We are not ready to deal with this kind of situation. It's an emergency. And Gaza, as I said before, was subjected to an aggression last May in 2021, and it became so much dire on the people of Gaza in general.
Okay, please, once again, I ask you to stand by, Aya and Mohammed. We're going to play a little video clip, and then we'll get back to you, Mohammed. The question I put to you, which you can respond to after this video clip plays out, is let's look at the timeline of the major attacks carried out by Israeli forces on Gaza since 2005, when it withdrew from the Gaza Strip, which is, as we know, a coastal enclave which is home to more than 2.3 million people. So I'm going to start with August 2005. Bear the date in mind. I'll be back with you in a minute or two.
الحمد لله على سلامتك يا عمو. الحمد لله على سلامتك.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Welcome back. 8:29 a.m. Central African Time. We're going to cross over now to Mohammed Mhawesh, a Palestinian journalist based in Gaza City. Mohammed, in August 2005, Israeli forces withdrew from Gaza 38 years after capturing it from Egypt abandoning settlements and leaving it under the control of the Palestinian Authority. What is the situation as far as the PA and Hamas is concerned regarding the latest attacks? And let's go back to 2005. Let's look at January 2006 as well. We know Hamas, an armed group, in January 2006, won the majority of seats in a Palestinian legislative election. And then in June 2006, Hamas captured Israeli army conscript Gilad Shalit in a cross-border raid from Gaza, prompting Israeli air raids and incursions. So we're looking at August 2005, January 2006, and June 2006. And also Hamas and the PA's role as far as these latest incursions are concerned. Mohammed?
Yes, I mean, yeah, thank you for raising this question. I think the Palestinian people, whether it's Hamas or the Palestinian Authority, fight on different fronts, yet they are wholeheartedly connected. I mean, Hamas fights in Gaza and the PA fights from the West Bank through diplomatic procedures. And it is not a matter of who is fighting, it is a matter of why. Because Palestinians have been for 7 decades, not only from since 2005, they have been since the 1948, they have been fighting with the spirit of liberation. They have been fighting for the basic human rights of dignity and equality and justice and basic human rights, because Israel initiates a labyrinthine system that doesn't discriminate whether it's Hamas or the PA, as long as we are Palestinians. A labyrinthine system that aims to intersect its cruel policies in the middle and in the little tiny aspects of our lives. It controls, for example, even after it withdrew from the Gaza Strip, it still controls our water resources. So the people dismisses the big deals and just think of washing their faces and having access to clean drinking water, to the point that we think of leaving the country, to the point that we think of departure. And this is one process of the cleansing that Israel is working on, to dispossess the indigenous Palestinians so that another foreign population can take over. This is number one. Israel still controls our electricity. Every neighborhood in Gaza is up for electricity that is 4 hours or less in 24 hours in one day, which is totally inhumane. For example, as a journalist, I struggle to report on the breaking news and the events unfolding around me if I don't have electricity or internet. I shall keep my news and reporting to the next day, which is totally unacceptable for journalism to happen. I tend to delay my work to the next day until I have electricity and water and internet. I mean, Hamas tried militarily, though it is very harsh to compare the power of Hamas and or the Islamic Jihad with the power of the Israeli military. They are people who are simply carrying weapons for the sake of defending their people and land and liberating the occupied, fragmented parts of their homeland.
Okay, let's fast forward to December 2008. Israel launched a 22-day military offensive in Gaza after rockets were fired at the southern Israeli town of Sderot.
Again, sorry.
Israel, in the year 2008, in December 2008, Israel launched a 22-day military offensive in Gaza. This was, according to them, in retaliation of rockets that were fired at the southern town of Sderot. And in that, sadly, when that happened, about 1,400 Palestinians and only 13 Israelis were killed before a ceasefire was agreed upon. And then in November 2012, Israeli killed Hamas's military chief of staff, Ahmed Jabari, followed by 8 days of Israeli air raids on Palestine. And it goes on and on and on. In 2014, the kidnapping, killing of 3 Israeli teenagers by Hamas led to a 7-week war in which more than almost 2,500 Palestinians were killed in Gaza, along with only 73 Israelis, including 67 soldiers. So this is a history of ongoing murder, um, un, unimaginable inequality that goes on in this part of the world, and yet the international world seems to be totally silent, and are unable to or unwilling to intervene and stop this madness, this mad murder that is carrying on a mass scale. Mohammed.
Yes, yes. I mean, always Israel starts the story with secondly. They don't come up with the excuse that, yes, we occupied the people and deprived them of all the life necessities. They start the story with secondly, that Hamas did and Hamas, for example, have been doing. Instead of, coming up with explanations and proper, reasonable justifications of the killing and murder of the Palestinian people in Gaza. I mean, just at the time they were bombing Gaza, there were mass at-risk campaign in the West Bank happening on Palestinians. I mean, they were civilians also standing in front of the TV with their families watching what's happening on and what's going on in Gaza. So this is what Israel does. It doesn't come with explanations. It does come with excuses and weak excuses to justify the murders against people and Palestinians, whether it's in Gaza or in the West Bank. And they always blame Hamas. Hamas has become the rhetoric and the big demand context and pretext that Israel kills and wipes us from the civil registry, as if Hamas had been the problem of the establishment of Israel prior to 1948. Hamas is only 20 years old. This means that Palestinians have been fighting for 50 years prior to Hamas establishment, have been fighting the Israeli occupation and the colonization of their lands. I mean, even if it wasn't Hamas, it would be another name that also standing for the same principle of liberating the Palestinian land from the occupier. And also Hamas tries to be to not separate its defense from the people, because Hamas is the Palestinian people. And I'm not defending any group of people, but I'm just explaining the story that's been unhappy and that's been twisted by the Israeli propaganda to the international community. So the Palestinians in Gaza are up against an occupation, and this is the major Romeo story, and this is how we should frame it, because it is it is necessary to understand how necessary it is to keep fighting through whatever means necessary and possible for an occupied people until they feel free and safe and independent.
Okay, Mohammed, I'll come back to you. I want to talk about incursions in March 2018, May 2021, and August 2022, which is, of course, our current situation that we're covering right now. Let's go back to you, Aya. We understand that Islamic Jihad militants in Gaza said that they had agreed to a Cairo brokered ceasefire to end the 3 days of intense conflict with Israel that has left at least 41 Palestinians dead. What more do you know about the ceasefire? Is this in fact true? Aya, are you there?
Yes. Well, they agreed to go on a ceasefire, and it went into effect actually last night at 11:30 p.m. The terms of the ceasefire included the release of the political detainee, Palestinian detainee Khalil Awauda, who has been on a hunger strike for over 100 days. And he is in a very critical condition. So he is supposed to go to the hospital and go back to his home. In addition to the release of the prisoner Sheikh Saadi, who is a member in Jihad, the Islamic Jihad group. But also It included lifting the siege and entering the fuel to the Gaza Strip. But let me tell you something from my observation as a person who's been living in Gaza and survived four war aggressions, if I may say. Every time we have a ceasefire, we have terms, and Israel is supposed to commit to them. Israel actually does not do any of them. So it's more of only a ceasefire, but I don't trust Israel at all because this is the case every time. We reach an agreement with the occupier, and then they deceive us. They never grant us our rights, and that's why we are in a vicious circle of violence. There is no normal life under an abnormal system of oppression. Therefore, you would see Palestinians suffering, and here people in Gaza continue to suffer every day, and we go through hardships every day.
Okay, Aya, let me just ask you to please stand by. Mohammed's battery is about to die out. Let me just put my final questions to Mohammed, and then I'll come back to you. Mohammed, are you still there? Are you still with us? Okay, sadly, we've lost Mohammed. We'll continue the interview with Aya. Aya, we talk about the ceasefire. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Aya,
I can hear you.
all right. Aya Al-Ghazzawi is a Palestinian human rights activist based in Gaza. What exactly does a ceasefire mean? Does that mean it is safe for the people to go out and carry on with their normal business? And who will monitor that the ceasefire is being adhered to? Surely you need an international peacekeeping corps to keep an eye on a situation like this?
Yes. So the ceasefire came with Qatari and Egyptian, but mostly Egyptian mediation between the Palestinian jihad group and the Israeli occupier. And as I said, it went into effect at 11:30 p.m. Yesterday night. And yes, people were very much eager to start going back to their normal activities and practice to go to their work and go to their universities and all. During the past 3 days, the life in Gaza was on hold. No one went to work. Shops were closed. Every feature of life was stopped. But today, this week started, having a kind of movement. There are people in the streets now, shops open their doors, universities somehow declared that they would resume their work as usual. And that's why we somehow can see and sense some relief. But we cannot guarantee the Israeli side because they always feed on violence. They can at any time break the ceasefire and start another round of violence as always. While for Palestinians here in Gaza, we are just trying to regain our breath, but it is a very sad day because it's true that we survived, but other people lost their beloved. There are so much destruction. Israel destroyed about 1,500 residential units, 9 of them entirely destroyed. About 1,400 units were partially damaged. 17 of them are not fitting for human use anymore. So it's still complicated, and we still haven't recovered from previous aggressions. People whose homes got damaged and destroyed in the last aggressions, even from back 2014 aggressions, till they didn't have got their homes rebuilt. I don't know how long can we stand this. especially that Gaza is the most densely populated area, and we still suffer from insufferable life conditions. But it is, it's always a call that reminds us of the necessity to demand the lift of the siege, because Palestinians in Gaza need to live in dignity. We need freedom, justice, and equality, and these are our basic rights. While other human beings enjoy these rights around the world for granted, we have to fight. We have to go through hardship, and I don't understand how is this allowed to happen under this conspiracy of silence among the international community, the government, etc. But to say the least, it isn't the government who we rely on. It's actually the civilian communities, international civilian communities, which we bank on, because we need to exert the pressure on government and governors to stop the relationship with Israel. We need to demand these relations to be severed, all ties to be cut with Israel, and to boycott Israel until it ends its atrocities against Palestinians and violations of the international law and human rights declarations. This has to end, and people around the world who are freedom-loving, who advocate for social and political justice, need to heed the call of the oppressed Palestinians by standing by them, by endorsing the BDS boycott, divestment, and sanctions call, by sharing the human stories of the Palestinian casualties behind and beyond numbers. And I hate it. I mean, Mohammed just minutes ago talked about the unfair coverage in media of the Palestinian casualties, of the situation in Gaza. And he's right. He's really right. It is something very much saddening and upsetting, to say the least.
Aya, my final question then to you would be, as a Palestinian human rights activist based in Gaza, you too are at the front line of all of these atrocities. What do you want to say to the international community, international governments, and very especially those governments who are supplying arms and munitions to the Israelis to keep the Palestinian people prisoner, possibly being the largest open air prison in the world, keeping you prisoner in your own land? What is your very strong message to the international community, to international governments, very especially the United States?
Yes, so many governments actually are complicit in the Israeli system of oppression, especially the U.S., because it aids Israel with military aid, and it gives Israel about $3.8 million every year. Not to say the tax money of the American people goes to Israel. I mean, I think the Secretary of State of the U.S. declared their support of Israel's right to self-defense. What self-defense were they talking about? What they meant? I didn't understand. I mean, Israel started the attack, and then they consent to Israel continue the hegemony and the heartless attacks and airstrikes on the Gazan people who are civilians and completely unarmed. Of course, there are other countries such as the UK, the Elbit system, who are the biggest weapon manufacturer for Israel. What I want to say is that the blood of Palestinians is at the hands of those companies, of those governments. I can't understand how can they allow this to happen. How can they be a cause to the continuation of suffering of people who don't have so much to do. And our land has been taken. Our people are being killed, are being imprisoned, are being oppressed. and then these companies and these governments come to support Israel, the oppressor, the colonizer. I mean, seriously, this is something that I cannot understand, actually. So my message to them is that you need to wake up. You need to understand that you are complicit, and you need to end this complicity now. You have to sever all ties with Israel and to start calling for actual support for the Palestinian people. You need to start boycotting Israel. You need to humanize Palestinians.
Aya Al-Ghazzawi, you rightly say that the blood is on the hands of the international governments, those that supply the arms and munitions to Israelis, and turn a blind eye to the massacre of the Palestinian people and the stealing of the Palestinian lands. Shukran for being with us on the show this morning. Our du'as are with each and every one of you as the collective Palestinian people. Inshallah, this madness does end, and it ends soon. Aya Al-Ghazzawi, Palestinian Human Rights Activist based in Gaza. Salaam alaikum to you. Khuda Hafiz.
Welcome, Sam. Thank you very much for having me with you.
Pleasure. Let's take a listen and a view to a short clip before we are joined by Faisal Salih, chairman of the Bosmont Madrasa and Bosmont Mosque and Madrasa Committee, to talk to us about a Buy a Brick campaign.
زرعت فيها الآلام بعزيمته إعصار وتسامى بالإيمان الصادق بل كالنار لسان بثبات